I am calling this meeting of the Mount Ascutney School District Board to order at 6:42 p.m. on this Monday, May the 5th, 2025. And we will start with any changes or additions to the agenda. And I do have one that we had checked in, I checked in about a couple days ago. We're going to move the student presentation of learning portion of the administrative report before public comment. So that's going to be number 4, and then the numbers will change from there. Any other changes to the agenda?
Sorry.
Oh, hello. Watch the cables. All right, no other changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Hearing no further changes, I will move on to the approval of the minutes from April 7th, 2025. Everybody has a moment to take a look at those, or if you have already. Do you see any changes or additions that need to be made for that? All right, I will take a motion to, approve the minutes from April 7th, 2025.
So moved. Second.
All right. Any discussion? Nope. All right, in that case, I will take a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes from April 7th, 2025, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Any abstentions?
Me.
Bill isn't there. All right. Thank you, Bill. All right, so those are approved. And next, as I said, we are going to have our student presentation of learning at this time. So let's take it away.
Sweet. Where to go?
Is it a,
I can share my screen. So
if you're in the meeting, yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
Hit present. Yeah, slideshow. Yeah, there you go. Sweet. So Kim and I had the pleasure of taking a group of 12 students down to Baja, Mexico for a March intensive trip. And because of your grace and generosity of allowing us to take these students out of the country, we just wanted to come back and explore with you the sights and sounds of Baja, Mexico. And so the first thing we want to talk about is the group that we chose. This group is Ecology Project International. They're a not-for-profit group that specializes in student travel. They take kids all over the United States and through Central America on various trips. And the main goal of their trip is conservation. Kim, do you want to speak any more to that?
Not only that, they give a lot of money to science research and really support science and care about science, citizen science, and funding those initiatives internationally. So we really liked all those things. It wasn't just like a for-profit entity that wanted to take us on a tour and do some sightseeing. It wasn't that at all. That's not their organization.
When I presented in September, I showed you their budget, and it was like 1.5 million coming in, 1.3 million going out. So they're not in it for the money. They're in it to have experiences like this with the kids. The biggest takeaways that they wanted to do was expose these guys to a different ecosystem. The peninsula of Baja is a desert ecosystem, which is dramatically different from what you see around here. Not only that, we were camping on an island for 4 nights, and so you have that marine ecosystem as well. And so those are the 2 big takeaways. And then one of the other things that I thought the majority of the kids got a lot of benefit from was meeting up with a local high school ecology group called Californios Verde. Did I say that right? Maybe. And so there was kind of a cultural exchange that took place between the groups of students and just kind of understand what they do differently to help preserve their ecosystems and environments. With us today, we have Hudson and Austin. And so if you guys want to go ahead and start talking about the trip.
So this is our group that went down to Mexico. It consists of sophomores, juniors, and seniors. We
And
left,
most importantly, you all took,
All of whom were enrolled in marine,
yes,
coastal marine ecology in the fall, that elective course that we offered this year. So it wasn't a requirement, but it really helped ease that transition.
yeah, definitely. So we all boarded a bus up to Burlington and then flew out. So Austin, do you want?
Yeah, sure. So we got from the airport and we took like a three-hour van ride to La Paz, and we kind of like get settled in, get kind of familiar with the environment, and then we got our phones taken away, which is a big part of the trip, because if you want to focus more on the environment, get more immersed into the trip, phones got to go away. So that's like one big part. I don't think we got our phones back until like the last day of the trip. And of course, we have the cultural exchange that Mr. Baker talked about. We kind of just got familiar with what their organization does, and we kind of have some fun together. We did some cultural dances together, kind of understand the culture a little bit more. And also, we did mention the hike, which we kind of went into the cities, which in the next slide, I believe, there's a picture of it. So we went up like a desert, not like super high hike like the ones we have in Vermont. It's kind of like a slope. And we not only we get to hike, we get to learn as well, like how the different plants adapt to the desert environment.
I didn't need to go forward. I think that.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
So that's from the hike. That's us dancing. That's kind of view out from the city street. So
Hold on, real quickly, if you go back, Hudson, 2 slides. So our 3 guides were Angel, Mela, and Ava. Angel and Mela were employees of EPI, or are employees of EPI, and Ava is kind of a guide in training. And they were with us 24/7 from when we landed at the airport until when we left the airport 8 days later.
And
So-
they were also scientists.
Yeah.
Ava and Mela were both graduating with marine biology degrees. And so they were guides and had guide training, but also scientists themselves. And Ava was going to go to college and become a marine biologist. So
Yeah.
they had both and were strong in both, which was really key to making the trip.
Yeah. So after that day, we took a boat ride out to Espiritu Santo Island, which was a 90-minute boat ride. Had all our stuff packed up, had our snorkeling gears, we set up our tents. We went snorkeling. We didn't have a package snorkel. Then we had chefs on site that prepared our meals, which was really incredible. And it was really good food as well. And we also had, so we snorkeled at 2 different locations on day 4. Day 5, we did an island hike, and then we did our research project intro. So basically, we divvied up into groups and did small research projects with the very, very limited tools that we had out stranded on an island in Mexico, which was really interesting because we have a lot more advanced tools when we were on land in Vermont.
But that's part of the experience as well, is that this whole idea of citizen science is where you don't need the fancy tools to collect data, to analyze data, to present your results. And so it's just about formulating the correct question to use the tools that are at your disposal.
What were you researching?
My group specifically researched the salinity of the water compared to the depth of the water. So we measured it and then compared it. There wasn't really a difference, but
So
Were you
where
in the
did
same group, Austin?
No, I was in a separate group. My group kind of did like a land thing because I myself isn't too much of a water guy. Half the trip I was struggling to stay afloat, but it's over. So my group did like a desert thing. We kind of measured how the salinity and like different factors of the soil like affected like the abundance and biodiversity of the plants that's living on there. And we had like this little fancy tool to measure the salinity of it, and we did find out there was a difference. And actually, I can't remember too much of it because that's a little bit in the past, but it was pretty cool. There was a difference, and
You also swam with sea lions.
Other research groups, there was another group that looked at invertebrate versus vertebrate species in tide pools. There was another group that looked at coral diversity as you got further away from shore. And so everybody was really able to kind of explore a question of their choosing an interest.
Yeah, they waited a few days into the trip after they had had some experiences. So hope that sparked some sort of interest or passion in them.
So this is a little bit more about the culture exchange and city tour. The California's Verdes members trying to learn more about the environment, but also advocate for protection, but also advocate for protection of the vulnerable land and waters. We learned dances and we went hiking, as we said, and then we also got to tour the city and visit a few souvenir shops and go to a mix. So it's really fun. And then here, Austin, do you want to?
Okay, let's see. But was this the?
So
that
this
was-
is the actual island we camped on.
Okay.
And the little beach that we were on, here, I'm going to borrow the mouse real quickly, was in this little peninsula right here. And so we took the boat into there, and then the hike that we took was a little further north. And then at the far northern edge was the Sea Lion Rookery. So,
It was deserted, completely deserted,
except for the other travelers that were there and the nice, pretty yachts that were parked in the different inlets. And yeah,
And also in regards to this island, I think there was a part like back there from where we camped. It's kind of like barred from entry because they are trying to make like an effort to protect that vulnerable land. So we're not allowed to go over there, right?
correct. So as it says up there, in 2005, it was named a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In 2007, it was named a national park. And so there are only very specific areas that you're allowed to visit. In fact, at one point in time on the second day, the boat police showed up and they were just checking permits because I guess for every boat that you have, you're allowed to stay 3 days. And they just wanted to make sure that both boats had the appropriate permits so we could be there for as long as we were saying we were. So.
Some pictures of us camping on the remote island. That was a kitchen that they had set up. Wow. Those are rows of tents, and that's kind of the kitchen. And there's a pile of snorkeling gear.
And somehow they made us some cakes from that tent. I don't know how they did it, but we got to eat cake on 2 times, which was pretty nice.
You go to the next slide.
I think I had to finish like a whole thing of salad in order to eat the cake.
Yeah.
So this is just more of the island, and you can see in the middle of the screen there, that's just one of the images of food that they had. Everything was fresh, prepared on site, and it was absolutely delicious. And one of the other things to help with this idea of conservation is that after every meal, there are groups of people responsible for cleaning the dishes and cleaning up after everybody. So there's that sense of responsibility towards that. And that was one of the cool things as well.
I think also they had to learn about, what's the word I'm looking for? Low impact camping practices,
Yes.
because we had to pack in and pack out everything, including all of our waste and human waste. So they learned about dry toilets and also learned about all of your waste, how you do that. How do you actually go to a place and leave no trace? And they had a lot of learning about no trace practices and the philosophy behind no trace, which I think is great. And to feed that many people with actually a local that made all of our meals, amazing food. Can you believe being on a trip with that many kids and not have one kid complain about the food? That's how good it was.
Wow.
So I
heard you balked at the ceviche.
I did. I'm not.
You tried it.
I didn't even try it. I'm not a big fish, seafood kind of guy. And then to have it only prepared in lemon juice and lime juice, that just kind of. No, thank you. Everything else was fantastic. It's supposedly the ceviche was delicious as well, but I passed.
I think I had it on a piece on the chip.
No.
This is some more snorkeling pictures.
Oh,
Underwater, I think you're the one that cried for most of this photography.
Yeah, Mr. Richard, when I was going through your photo dump, there was like most of these are like underwater pictures.
Oh,
I
okay.
scroll.
Yeah.
scroll.
I don't know.
You can see some different reefs and different types of fish there. It was difficult for me to identify the fish because I don't wear contacts and everything looked like a blob.
They did give these kids waterproof guides, and that's where the citizens science came in. So after, one of the cool things about the trip from a teacher perspective is they woke up, they had breakfast, they did a learning activity, like a lesson, and then they went and did an activity like snorkeling. But with that, like they were trying to get them, it wasn't just for fun, like learning how to identify if you could see them, right?
Yeah.
And count them and collect all that data together. And then we'd come back for lunch and we'd do another lesson and another activity. And it went all the way to bed.
I mean, there was no
No downtime.
It
Really.
was, and I'm glad there wasn't.
They didn't even have a chance to miss their phone.
Right.
Yeah.
Some great group research photos, is pictured there of us working. You can also see the water and our boat that we went out on.
If you look, this picture of Justin, he's using the refractometer, which is what Austin was talking about, that
Yeah,
allows us
yeah.
to measure the salinity of water samples or soil samples. And then you can see one of the fish guides as well that they were able to have with them in the water as they were swimming to say, hey, I just saw this fish, or look at that fish over there. Or do you think it's one of these two? And that was a really cool experience.
The kids don't know how lucky they are because I've done a lot of traveling and snorkeling and I haven't seen reefs and fish like this probably since I went to Hawaii 20 years ago. I mean, a lot of the reefs in the Caribbean are dying and they're so lucky to have seen what they saw and the amount of fish and coral. And I don't know about your experience, Jeff. But
Yeah, Hudson, if you go back one slide. And so, nope, back to the coral reef one. You're going the wrong way. Sorry. There you go. So you can see in these two pictures on the left-hand side here a little bit, the white tips of the reef. That's the coral bleaching that Kim was talking about. Most reefs that I've been to on the East Coast of the United States, the entire reef itself is that white color, or it's a greenish color because the algae is taken over. And so to be able to see reefs like that in a relatively pristine nature was fantastic. So.
This is the group hike we took, which was about a 35-minute boat ride from where we were. Was it on a different island?
Nope, same island,
Same
just a little further north.
It all kind of blends it out there. But basically, it was maybe a mile there and back, in kind of desert coves. Some goats on this hike, which was really interesting to see, because they're endangered.
You mean invasive?
Invasive, yeah.
And yeah, it was kind of neat to learn about that. I saw some cactus, which was interesting.
I think, again, a lot of the students that went on this trip are avid outdoors people. And you say, hey, we're going to go hike. And they think Mount Ascutney, where you're surrounded by pine trees or birch trees or something along those lines. And you're kind of used to the flora and fauna as you go on those hikes, completely night and day. You know, a lot of these bushes, I think Justin or Joey looked at one and said that bush could kill me because of the size of the thorns that were on it and stuff like that. And so, again, for me, it was an awesome experience.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
I'm just wondering, water's so scarce, we had to bring all of our water and had limited water and had to learn to be, scarce and
Yeah.
save our water. But how they learned how the plants get the water from and trees get it from the rocks in an environment like that. So different than New England.
So this was our sea lion adventure. We swam with them. They're not dangerous. I will say that was it was really kind of nerve-wracking because the current was really strong out there. And some of us were holding on for dear life because it was just so aggressive and Miss Gogan just like swimming along aggressively and picking everyone, not knowing. But and it was a really good experience. I would just because of the water, it definitely was not my favorite part of the trip, but I'm glad I experienced it and I did see some students who wanted to.
Yeah, and one of the students may have been nibbled on their life jacket. Jessie was, and so that was a really cool experience for her. I think the other thing about this is, again, this is kind of an island off the northern end, and so as Hudson said, we're not quite in the protected areas that we were previous. So the currents were a little faster, the water was a little bit colder, and you're also swimming with these mammals that if you get in the way of mom and baby, they will attack. And so that was definitely probably the most anxiety-inducing experience of a lot of our students, but they were all super happy to have done it.
Yeah.
Our guide on how had done this, and that's why we could do it several times. He had done it in the job before.
Yeah.
So I think he put us all at ease that he knew exactly what he was doing. At least I trusted that he knew what he was doing and when to get close and when to leave. So it was a crazy experience, and the experience of a lifetime, even for me as an adult, let alone for a kid.
Yeah, no, it was really an amazing experience. I would definitely say my favorite part, I'm not on here, but my favorite part was just the experience as whole. Being newsless for 5 days was great. And it was just kind of nice to be, you know, away from the crazy world of the internet. And then you just realize it's a very different world. And it was nice to live in that world for 5 days. And that's the end.
Good job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a picture here kind of in the middle, and you can see us pushing the boat a little bit there. If we go back, so when we went up to the Sea Lion Rookery, which was out here at the very tip of the island, we came back along the backside, and there's a little channel through here, and that channel may have been ankle deep.
Oh, wow.
You know, and so they were like, yeah, we're probably gonna have to get everybody out of the boat and push. And so I really liked it because it's just one of those things you don't normally do.
Yep.
You know, and to
Absolutely.
get these kids to take 12 kids who don't normally hang out together, B, put them in tents on a deserted island without cell phones for 5 days together, and then to have all of these experiences, it was amazing. So thank you guys for allowing us to do it.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming here and sharing your experience.
It's awesome.
All
Thanks.
right.
Sounds like you're gonna maybe do it again, Mr. Beachy.
That's
Ms.
cool.
Gogan.
That'd be cool.
I'll be back in another board meeting to talk about it.
Okay.
All right. Do we have any more student presentational learning, or
No.
is the only one?
There's in mine. In Jennifer's report.
In
she
Jen's
got something,
report.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So with that, we are on to public comments, and this is on any non-agenda items or just announcements. So I'm going to read my thing here. Public comment is not legally required, but we believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns over issues. Through these meetings, our board models out for students how to conduct public discourse, and that the board and members of our community can approach controversial issues in a civil and constructive manner and can demonstrate mutual respect. Having said that, please note the board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed for discussion. And please start by identifying yourself and what town you reside in, and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. I know that at the last meeting, I think because of the subject matter and sort of at our discretion, we expanded that a little bit. At this one, we are going to go back to just doing 3 minutes, one comment on things. If there's something that really needs clarification, raise your hand, and we can be a little flexible with that, but we do want to keep it kind of tight this time. All right. Any public comments or announcements for stuff not on the agenda?
Hi, Liz Frederick from Brownsville. So I just wanted to take a minute to say, I came to the last meeting, with some concerns. And I'll probably have some concerns in this meeting too, but I just also wanted to share something positive. So I did notice on the agenda, there's not a bullying follow-up with our bullying discussion last week, and I know we had some things to follow up on about. I did want to share that I got a letter from Jennifer. I got a letter from Christine. I appreciated them both. And Jennifer also followed up with the school with transparency, you know, and an explanation and an apology. And I just want to say that I feel like that is a really great example of leadership. And I just want to say I really appreciated it. I would love to see more throughout the whole district of transparency and communication, which is something I feel Jennifer's really good at. And snowballing off that because it's Teacher Appreciation Week. I just want to say I appreciate Jennifer. I appreciate all of the teachers at Albert Bridge. And, you know, I know that I've been here with some negative things to say, which are legitimate things, and I'll probably have more complaints, but at the same time, I also want to say that like Albert Bridge is such an incredible place. You know, the outdoor learning is incredible, and, you know, Jennifer's done an amazing job of making all the parents feel really welcome in the school, which I know you don't get everywhere. But I feel like I can walk into the school. I know everyone there. I have warm feelings towards every single teacher, staff member in the building. So I just wanted to publicly say, like, I love the school. There's a lot of positive things, even though we're here. We've been coming to these meetings with concerns and sharing our negative experiences. But I just felt that needed to be said.
Appreciate it, Liz. Thank you. Any other comments or announcements? I have one. I'll just throw out there that I got to go to the high school play, Alice in Wonderland, on Friday. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know.
Yep. Yeah, no, it was really, I'm always just so impressed by how well our students, you know, put these plays together. It's always, I mean, it was a really creative take on Alice in Wonderland that I hadn't seen before. And hearing that they're getting out and, you know, going into competitions with these, it's really cool to see how far that theater program continues to go after all these years. So, and we'll miss Lauren Warner a lot next year, but they're, you know, they got momentum. So
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
Bill just put a
Oh,
message in the chat and asked who was speaking. And I don't know, Liz, if you said your name.
Yeah.
You did? Okay. It was Liz Frederick. Bill.
yeah. Apologies if it's a little
It's hard to hear
on that
because
end.
it's,
Yeah,
it's just my
sort of-
microphone.
Yeah, next time we'll have the owl.
Yeah.
Rehabbed.
It's the second meeting I've had today where the owl has gone on strike.
If it needs an update, it might.
There might be a firmware thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's in the
Yeah.
air. My work laptop had to go through like an hour and a half of firmware update before I could do anything today too. So spring cleaning.
Spring cleaning.
Yep. Any other announcements or public comment for non-agenda items? All right. Well, hearing none, we will move on to the administrative report.
Alrighty. Let's hope my computer holds up.
I know mine doesn't have a working camera. So. On the mic's good.
Right, I'll go ahead and start talking. Mine's up first. So we've had a wonderful experience at our school recently, which we want to celebrate with you all, and then bring something to your attention, which is we had two students who. Sorry, we had two students who. Is that better, Bill? Maybe. We had two students who made the finals for the Geo and History Bee for nationals. and they are planning on going.
Oh, great.
So we've also had one that made it all the way to the international, which is going to be in Paris.
Wow.
Oh, isn't that awesome?
So they are looking to raise some funds to help support them to do that. And because this is an out-of-state, out-of-country thing, we want to make sure that you guys were aware of it. So can I ask you guys a couple questions about that? Yes, the first is who's the history and who's the geography person?
I have a history question.
Your name?
I'm Labrakian and I'm doing geography.
Thank you. And so each of them, their parents are going with them. Each of their parents also happen to be educators in our system. So that makes it easy in that way. When you guys are going, what are you trying to raise? How much are you trying to raise?
I think for Florida, which is the nationals, it's gonna be like, if you add up all the money, it's probably gonna be like $2,000. The entry fee for Paris is $2,000.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
The entry fee to get into the competition, is $2,000, and it's more to stay, do other stuff.
Why, do you remember why that is more expensive than the nationals, like what's included with the competition?
Because it has other stuff, not just broken based, it has, written responses and different stuff.
So for the international competition, there's a competition each day, different exams and buzzer-based competitions and mock scenarios. And then there's also field trips to different historical sites every single day. So the competition is a lot more expensive to attend.
How long is that time period?
So the national competition, each of them will compete from 2 to 3 days, depending on how well they do. And then the international is a 7-day experience. And so there's one competition each day that they're required to attend. And then there's optional additional ones, like history of music or, kind of fun ones if you're into that kind of thing.
That is so awesome.
Yeah, that's really
Do
cool.
you have a GoFundMe set up and all that?
We don't have that. We have done some fundraising this past weekend. We were at the Butcher and Pantry, and the students did on-demand trivia challenge. So people donated to either ask them or talk to them about their interest or challenge them to a 3-question challenge. And I think there was all but one person that you guys beat, right? The 1 or 2 people. So they definitely had good practice and showed off their skills. We are also selling, Farmer's Body donated some lip balms that are for sale at Butcher and Pantry as well that we're selling, and some other fundraising events.
Right, and Amanda is our lead for our academic club, academic club that meets during lunch, which they participate in, and so do many others, in order to practice and get excited about these kinds of things. So congratulations, we're super excited, and with you now to Florida. Let's start with Florida.
Florida, next week.
2 weeks.
2.
2 weeks.
Wow.
Week and a half.
A week and a half.
And then Paris
Paris
is,
is in July.
so thank you guys, congratulations for your hard work.
Thank you. And then I wanted to say as well that the Alpha Bridge has supported the entry fee. So to be involved in all of this, they had to take an online exam. And then from there, they went to a regional competition that the school paid for. And then from there, the national registration, which the school also paid for, the registration fee for the nationals. So thank you very much for the support. It's pretty exciting to continue to foster this love of learning,
Yeah.
and to give some extra time to some passions that are developing.
And also, I am so glad that you're still doing the GOP or that you're still taking part in these things. I wondered whether they were still
It
going.
came about a couple of years ago because I went to do the National Geographic GeoBeat, right? We all have experiences and we're doing that. They actually don't do that anymore. And so it's a different organization that is taking over all these academic challenges.
Excellent.
Yeah, so it's the same vein, but it's not through the same organization.
Where in Florida are you going to?
Well, so this is the exciting part. It's in Orlando.
Oh.
So,
Yay.
2 years ago to nationals, they both qualified 2 years ago
DC.
for history, actually both of them for history.
and that was in Washington DC. And then this year it's in Orlando. So we are doing a little Disney/Universal side trip that is self-funded.
Cool.
That's awesome.
There's also a giraffe sanctuary right there.
Okay, awesome. Right?
Universal tickets are discounted with the
Yeah.
district with the competition.
Yeah, the kids that go to the competition, they have a universal night for all the kids.
Oh, that's so cool.
So,
Yeah, that's
so
awesome.
kids from around the country and going to Universal together.
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, congratulations and best of luck.
Yeah.
And you're okay with fundraising, I'm assuming,
Oh,
for
yeah,
both trips?
yes.
So if you wanted to do GoFundMe
Or
something like it.
okay, yeah, thank you.
I don't think
Yeah.
we need to vote on it, but I mean, like,
No, I think it is because it's an out of the country, especially that international trip. We just wanted to bring it to your attention
Sure.
and get your
yeah. all for it.
blessing.
Okay.
I'm sure
I'll
you're
stop
fine
by,
with
I'll
it.
try
but-
to remember to stop by Butcher and Pantry and pick
Yeah.
up some,
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
yeah, thanks so
Awesome.
much.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So I want to talk a little bit about our exploratory time, which is when we sort of put a choice for some flexible options for the students. And in the bottom, as you're looking at it, right-hand corner, that's an image from one of the exploratory groups. And this was following up after every student in the school wrote their own book. And we had a big book party, and then this is following up with that. They were doing a reading of something that they chose that they wanted to learn about, and it was about paleontology. And after this reading, it's not on the screen, but they got to talk with an actual archaeologist and ask questions about what they do, why they do it, how they got into it, and all that stuff. We're moving on to the next phase of the exploratory, where kids are going to have different kinds of choices. And so it's kind of like every 6 weeks, kids get a new choice. One of the choices this round is for students to be going to the All-State Children's Course, which is for fourth and fifth grade. And we currently have 6 kids going. That is this Friday. I get to go with them up to CBU. So that's exciting. For our parent-teacher conferences, student-led conferences, we had 95% participation, which is really good. We're still working on 100%. We haven't given up on that one yet. Teacher Appreciation for Kids got kicked off. We're doing a theme around the musical Wicked. So wearing green today. Tomorrow's pink. So if you stop by the school, you'll see a lot of fun activities going around. And then I want to do an HHB update. So the first thing I want to do is read my letter that I shared with the community, just to make sure that everybody's aware of what I feel is important to share. So forgive me for reading. It says, Dear Albert Bridge School families, I'm reaching out to follow up on our recent review of hazing, harassment, and bullying records and reporting practices at Albert Bridge School. This review was initiated after it became clear that the data shared at our last board meeting was inaccurate. Following a thorough audit of our internal documents and reporting systems, both within the school and to state and federal agencies, we've confirmed that what was brought up during the Mount Ascutney School District School Board meeting in April, the HHB information presented did not accurately reflect the actual number of substantiated HA3 policy violations at Albert Bridge School. I personally want to sincerely apologize for this. The fault and responsibility are mine. Any student's experience with hazing, harassment, or bullying must be acknowledged and addressed with care and urgency. The fact that this reporting was inaccurate highlights the need for better record keeping and communication. We are actively working to improve our record keeping and reporting process to ensure accuracy, consistency, and responsiveness going forward. Please know this matter is being taken seriously, and we are fully committed to strengthening our practices so that all students feel seen, safe, and supported in our school community. Kristen and I will be sharing this update at this meeting, and we'll continue to work towards local and system-wide improvements in our HHB practices and discipline approaches, as well as communication. I also want to be very clear that the board gave me space, Christine gave me space to figure out what we did wrong, and so that we can fix it, and have been walking with me through this process. And that's a really supportive place to be. I really appreciate that. And I also want to just acknowledge the families that did come and share. We wouldn't have addressed it if it wasn't brought up. So I appreciate that. I do want to share the numbers that we came up with after our formal audit, which we looked at every document we had in our school. So in 2020 to 2021, we had 2 confirmed cases of substantiated harassment or bullying. In 21 to 22, we had 2 substantiated cases. 22 to 23, we had 4. And 23 to 24, we had 2. And I'll put that out there at our next, we will publicly display that as well. So upcoming stuff,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Yes. And if anybody wants more details about where I missed steps, I'm happy to share. Kindergarten registration is coming up. Our Bean Supper, which is a community-wide event where our 5th and 6th graders serve students to raise money for their trip, is coming up on the 17th. And that is at the Town Grange or the Historical Society. We are doing a first annual Touch a Truck event to kick off the, it is called Public Works Appreciation Week, something like that, which is that week of the 18th through the 24th. And we're going to be bringing trucks to the school, and we'll see how much focus some of our students can get. 3 through 6 is going to Northern Stage on the 21st, and we've got our spring concert on the 5th. We are going to be doing this at the town hall. We used to do it at the town hall, but it kind of too challenging to do that. But now the town hall is ready to let us take it over for that day, and we're going to do an evening concert as well. Our teacher has agreed to do that. Awesome. Big event. Right. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, Jen.
I apologize for being pictureless. I need to make that a goal. People who work with me know I can never find my phone.
That's true.
So I'm going to put that as a goal. So I'm sorry about that. Schools, when they share grade levels, that we have a lot of the same kind of things that go on. For the elementary side, we had 85% attendance for student-led conferences and got some good feedback. I think our students did a wonderful job presenting, even our youngest ones, who it's really a learning curve for them to talk about themselves. They're used to us talking about them, right? They're used to their parents, but for them to sit and present, and they did a great job. We have kindergarten registration. I think we've coordinated amongst all the schools to make sure we can share the right staff. So for Windsor, it's the 15th and 16th of May, and there's no school for our students that day.
Just kindergarten students.
Just kindergarten
kindergarten
students, yes,
students,
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Don't let that get out. Right. We are also celebrating Teacher Appreciation Week with the help of the PTO, and Kate's got some help from the boosters, and then Kate and Colleen and I are taking some steps to celebrate our staff. I think I reported the STEAM night of having 200 plus people. We had math night, which was a lot of fun. It was a much smaller group, about 87 plus people that attended. Everyone who went really had a great time, and the teachers worked hard to plan it. We are competing with baseball and different activities that take place. So we've already made it a goal to try to coordinate these between seasons, because I think that would really help. Families would be looking for something to go and do in the evenings. And then we have one more. May 29th is our literacy night. And so we'll start advertising that. But, these have been great events. We have 2 more leadership assemblies before the end of the year. And then the staff, in addition to what they do every day, are working really hard to build class lists, think about student needs, safety, services student need, to make sure we create classes that are allow them to get those services. We will send letters home to families before Step Up Day. And we also have teachers working on scheduling and working in teams to try to make sure kind of our days get coordinated. There's a lot that goes on this time of the year that doesn't have to do with the day-to-day kind of teaching that the teachers already have to do. So.
Awesome. And I'll just throw out there, I was able to go to the math night, which was really, really cool. I went around and saw all the different games, and I was kind of early, so I think people were still trickling in when I was there. But really, really great night. I'm looking forward to the lit ones. Put it on my calendar. And just a note on the leadership awards too, the Stripe Awards, it was really, I got to drop in last week and catch that too and do a little walk around the building, and it's really impressive to see how that practice has grown throughout the year. I went to one way back in the fall, and I think, the kind of newer student leaders were still sort of like getting their footing and figuring out how it ran. And it was early days, jumping back in, I think about 5-6 months later and seeing just how smoothly it ran and how into it all the kids were, and just how like positive and affirming it was really, really cool. So, yeah.
In Windsor Middle School, our updates, we have some positions at the middle school. We have an ELA and interventionist we're hiring for, and a science teacher with math intervention we're hiring for. We're doing kind of a hybrid position between Tracy and I in special education for a 5-6 special educator. And we are looking for a second lead teacher in our ACE classroom in the school. We are probably into the second round and meeting guests and giving tours to people for the special education positions, the 2 positions. We are in the second round and moving people to our ELA intervention position to come back and meet teachers, sit in and participate in class. I always put together a student panel to do some of the interviewing, so that will happen this week. And then we are just starting the first round of our science and math intervention position. So that's what we wanted, those. We have our spring concert coming up with the high school on May 14th in our Lois White Theater at 6 p.m. Students have been working really hard on that with Mr. Stamel and Mrs. Wood. Excited for that. Our 8th grade passages ceremony is on June 12th at 6 p.m. followed by a celebration dance for the middle school. All of our 6th graders from Albert Bridge and all of our Ascutney homeschoolers. And our school counselor, Ms. Richter, is working on the transitions by setting up some meetings with our 5th grade teachers and classes for the students coming in for step up day to 6th grade, some shadow days in the middle school. And she's also setting up some shadow days for 8th graders who want to see high school classes with the high school teachers. She's also working with Mr. McPhillips to find days that 6th grade mothers can come and visit and do some activities with us at Windsor. So that's happening with Ms. Richter and all the counselors in Ascutney. Student leadership. Couple of the pictures here in the top right corner. We recently, this was more a little bit of teacher leadership. Ms. Fox had reached out to the Precision Museum and brought in their lead museum educator who came in and did 2 days of electricity, magnetism lessons with our students. It was very engaging, a lot of fun. Here we are, 2 students using some LED bulbs and working with voltmeters. And below, every month we have our Students of the Month. We're very excited to honor them each month. And again, this year, the PTO sponsored all the $5 gift cards from local businesses for all of our students, which was really nice that they appreciate. And the other picture is our first 7 8th graders who had applied for the National Junior Honor Society memberships at our school. And Mr. Theo Avent is our high school National Honor Society advisor, and he will be continuing to work with these 7 students next year. And any of our 8th graders who are still interested in applying can apply all the way through with their requirements of this year, and they can be inducted next year. And we will continue working on this and developing this society at our school. And it was really exciting for them to have their first event. Also with leadership, our student leadership team did all the organization for our most recent dance, which was last Thursday.
And it went off without a hitch. We're very thankful to all the chaperones that the students secured. They did teachers, parents, and some people who don't even have kids in the school, who were very willing to just be helpful, just community members who are always volunteering.
I asked them how they wound up here. 'Cause why are you here? I know why I'm here. And they said when they were doing drop off in the morning, then let's keep the car.
So they did a great job securing chaperones. They got all the donations for snacks. We had homeschoolers, students, a couple of students from Albert Bridge. I think everyone had a good time. The playlist was excellent, and the custodial team was like, this was the fastest leadership cleanup team ever. They were done in 15 minutes, and that was really great. They were super, super proud. And they also, when they got there to set up for the dance, the custodians had already moved everything out of the cafeteria, and they said, who did this for us? And I said, the custodians. They said, oh, we need to do a thank you note.
That's great.
That was also the same night that at dismissal we had the bear.
Yeah.
And there, and as we're walking into the dance, the police came and just gave us a heads up that the bear was just on pitch court. So be careful after the vote for the dance.
Where was the dance held? In the cafeteria. We mostly hold them in the high school cafeteria. Kids like to have it's good to get the lights down. There's enough room for people to chaperone, and it's easy access for in and out, and we don't kind of damage any gymnasium floors. And it's easy cleanup. It's made for like making messes.
And it's big enough for you.
Yeah, for sure. The other two student leadership events that the leadership team would like to do before the end of the year is they're trying to do another kind of team competition with middle schoolers, against parents, against teachers. They did a basketball tournament at school. They want to do maybe a volleyball tournament in the evening they're working on, and they're also going to be leading the field day for their classmates at the end of the year. Student-led conferences, I think we're a little over 75%. I think we're really getting close to 80% right now, because we keep the list of the students who haven't presented, and we slowly, a lot of them are saying, oh, my mom couldn't come, we're going to get her here. So we're waiting on a couple parents to come, but we also want to make connections for kids who want to just present their portfolios, and they've been presenting to a lot of our support staff, some of the people in this room, some of our custodians, bus drivers, anybody that they just really feel close to help them, just give them some nice feedback on their portfolios. So that's where we are with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I also wanted to give you an update about our staffing. We're fortunate to have almost everyone coming back. Lauren, as we know, is moving. And we're starting our theater interviews this week. We did get 5 applicants. No one local. They're all from very far, but they seem very interested. That's also, in addition to be a hard job, that's also a highly coveted job. It's a hard job to find. So people are willing to relocate for it. So we have 4 interviews set up. We have a team working on those interviews that includes students. It includes theater. It includes Jamie Bernstein from Heartland. So we're really all working together to find the best fit. And an unusual move, we have Lauren kind of leading that charge. It's important to her, and she knows the vision that we have set, and so she's helping to continue that process.
Yeah.
Steve Malloy, who's a veteran teacher here, has moved into our instructional team leader position here, and that's like a natural progression. He's kind of member just like right in there, and just like that. Super lucky that last year, Theo Avent joined us in the special ed department as an interventionist. The role that Steve was leaving happened to be where Theo was certified, so we were hoping that he would find he did. So he will be taking over that role of history teacher and also helping with intervention as part of that job. So it feels really good about our staff for next year. Will be first time in a long time that we're opening, with the staff counseling department. So that feels great. Our student-led conferences, I should went first because I only had 30% attendance, and that was for a variety of reasons at the high school. It's different, but we were doing the same thing Colleen is doing, and we're systematically going through to make sure that each student presents to someone or at a time that is convenient with their parents. And since we've been doing that, we're up to about 80%, but on that night, we had 30%. Local school collaboration, Bellows Falls reached out to us, and we had done all that work with the AOE starting this year, and they were interested in learning what that was about. So they brought a team over here. I think they brought 12 people with them, and we did it very efficiently. They came at 8:40. They were done by 10 o'clock. They each got to meet with their counterpart here, and this room was buzzing. It was amazing. And I have find coming from your just part of when you work in a school in Vermont, you're the one person doing what you're doing, and particularly when you're in a high school, right? So that was really cool. And through that process, we learned from the principal, full disclosure, is their geoflight, right? So that's kind of a natural thing that they are. She is coming from a place of higher education, and she had brought that experience of how they address the day-to-day discipline, like the things that go on in the day-to-day world, not a larger HEB, how they're addressing that and what she has presented to their team and their learners. And we're working through to see what that could look like here. I presented to Christina and Tracy Price, want to move forward with it. So we have a couple things to work out, and then we hope to present that to you before we present it to students and parents, but it feels good. And just how good that meeting with that school felt. Kelly and I have been talking about getting other regional principals and teams involved, because each school does everything a little bit different, and they have a little bit different strengths than the other school. So that was a kind of a spur of the moment thing, about 2 weeks ago that really had great results. And Davis happened to.
Yeah, no, it was a busy day when I was here. Yeah, no, it was great to, just pop into the room and see everyone really just like keyed in, working on, was it the proficiency-based graduation requirements, which I know has been a really heavy lift for everyone, but yeah, it's awesome to see that kind of collaboration going on.
Yeah, it felt great. This picture here is one Lauren sent to me that kind of captured that Alice Wonderland. That is our team there currently off. Yeah, it's just it's just a neat picture that I wanted to share. Alice Wonderland was great. I hope everyone got a chance to see it. And then I tried to keep this short. Now I'm still talking. The student presentation that I wanted to share. There's the spring events that we have coming up in May. So you can pop in. I didn't want to overwhelm you, and then I'll share tunes with you when they come, but they're also in abundance.
Excellent. Thanks, Kate. All right, I am last up, and I don't have a ton of new information to share with you tonight since you're all at the SU board meeting a week ago. We are, it seems really like the year has flown by, and we're already to the end of it. So we are in end of year planning and planning for next year. You heard some of that transition conversations that are happening with our teachers. Hiring is underway. It does feel like we're having a few more applicants than we have over the past couple of years, which is promising, since we know that there is a teacher shortage, not just in Vermont, but across the country, which doesn't look like it's going to be getting better anytime in the near future. So it's great to have applicants. We did have our first instructional team leader meeting with Bridget Ferriel, who's the new director of curriculum, instruction and assessment. That was last week. Some of the items they were talking about were instructional coaching and what that looks like. And that was, that's been Angie's kind of dream. So it's really exciting for her to see that it's moving forward. And they've been training coaches as we've been coaching. So if something that happens in education, you're building as you're flying. But what coaching is going to look like in the future. So that conversation started. The team is looking at the assessment calendar and when assessments are happening. I had a really good conversation about creating the testing windows so that the information that we get is in line with conferences, so we can really share that information with parents and just get a letter without much explanation. So we had that conversation. This team will work on the professional development plan for next year, and have already gotten feedback from staff on some what they're looking for in literacy and math for professional development. and talking about, we hear from teachers all the time that they need time with their grade level peers to sit down and map things out and talk about what's working and what's not working. So that's really been front and center in those discussions. They'll be working on the literacy plan that was started. It needs to be finished. That's part of the literacy law implementation that we're working on. And then they talked about summer work. So it was a really productive meeting. It felt great. We have a strong team, which also feels like we're moving in the right, continuing to move forward. And I think Bridget's going to be a really excellent curriculum and instruction director. Yes, Elizabeth.
Is our district going to replace the LEAP with anything else?
I don't know. I haven't had that conversation.
Now that the education, what is it called? What is it called? The subdepartment of the Department of Education that does research and about educational practices has been totally defunded. And so they're not doing it anymore. So there's nobody to actually administer the NEEP exam or derive data from it.
Okay. No, we haven't talked about that yet. So I'll put it on my list. Lots
So
of
they
changes. Yeah.
plan to require the NEEP exam, but they don't have anybody to analyze it. That
Okay.
department is totally defunded, which is unfortunate. But I think we're going to be seeing more stuff like that in the coming 6 or 8 years.
Okay.
And there's a lot of airy announcements that are being made there at the moment. So I would like to see us address them on the district and supervisory level at each meeting so that parents can know that we know about it and that we are planning for it and so that we can talk about how to plan for it.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't have any legislative updates for you tonight. I was in a brief meeting today. I did hear that I think the House responded to H 454.
Well, at the moment, specifically for you, Jennifer, the classroom size requirement has been removed in the Senate version of the bill. And the school size requirement has been removed for now in the Senate version of the bill.
Yeah.
I tend to think that that is like, there are some changes that they made that were obviously strategic because they'll have to go to a committee of conference, which is when the House and Senate bills are really far apart. And they have to try to make them come together in one bill. When they do, when they have a committee of conference, they assign 2 or 3, it depends, members from each body to work together to negotiate between the 2 versions of the bill. And then when it comes back for a vote, it is an up or down vote. There's no amendments or anything. There's no floor speeches or anything. None of that stuff is just up or down. And it's just one of the many ways that a bill has to die, but it's an interesting one. And I think that some of these go back to the Senate version of the education bill. I think they stuck in some things in there that are kind of purposefully there for negotiations. I don't know whether class sizes is that way or not. But basically at the moment, last week, the Senate slowed down a lot on what they were doing. The week before last, they were really ramming a lot through in a short period of time.
Yeah.
And now they seem to be you know, taking a step back, which is.
Did you hear, Elizabeth, that, I mean, I thought I heard that draft 9.1. And I thought,
It got voted out on Friday afternoon.
yes,
Like 4 o'clock.
yes. And that's out of the House?
Senate.
Out of the
Education.
Senate, okay.
But then it will go to, the Senate has a different theory of education, not that they necessarily have one. In the House, we firmly believe that any financial changes need to have policy that go along with them.
Mhm.
We can't just make financial changes to the whole school system without having a system to back it up. In the Senate, they don't feel that way. So it got voted out on Friday from Senate Education. Sorry to be so wonkish, but
No, it's helpful.
that's who I am.
Yeah.
It'll go to Senate Finance tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay.
If discussions haven't already begun. So we don't know what that bill will look like by the end of the year.
Okay. And any updates I get, I'll share with you. I just was in a quick meeting today and they said there'll be a side-by-side that comes out shortly, like that compares. And I'll share that when I get it with you, but I haven't not read what came out on Friday. Yeah.
Well, it's 120
Yeah.
pages long.
Yeah.
So it's hard, but you can actually create a side-by-side by using AI.
Yes, I've been experimenting with that. Yeah, but I like to read it too when I have, the time. So anyway, that concludes our report for tonight. I'm gonna stop presenting.
Right. Thanks, everyone, for the administrative report here. So we're ready to move on to item 6 on our list. It's technically 7 now, but so we have some items for discussion, followed by motions if needed. And the first one, which I think will have a motion, is the tax anticipation note.
Yes, so every year, the board approves tax anticipation note. That's so we can borrow money if we need to make payroll. I have the amount for you, which will have to be in the motion. It is $2,986,601.10. And we do need a motion and a vote on that. And the tax note will have to be signed by all of you physically in June. They don't have it. It's too early to have it for signatures tonight, but.
All right, and that's for 2025, 2026 school year?
Yes.
Okay, so I will take a motion to approve the tax anticipation note for the 2025, 2026 school year, and that is for $2,986,601.10.
So second.
All right, any discussion?
That sounds like.
Deep sighs from Bill.
Sounds like Bill wants to talk about it. We can hear you breathing, Bill, that's all.
Was that sigh the sum total of your comment, Bill?
So yes, that was the sum total of my comment.
All right. All right. Hearing no further discussion on this one, I will take a roll call vote, starting with Elizabeth. How do you vote?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Megan?
Aye.
And online we got Bill,
Aye.
Amy,
Aye.
and I'm an aye as well. So that
Thank you.
is approved. Thanks for sharing that with us.
Yep. Got it.
All right. So our next item is on improving the Ascutney School District discipline system. And this is continuing on from our discussion last month. This is the updates on the work that our administrative team have been doing following that discussion. I think specifically around increased community or a change in how those policies and really procedures are communicated. And some other updates, I think, around the matrix and then the reporting schedule that we're going to stick to for the next year at least.
All right. So Colleen's gonna start us off. And I'm gonna click on our, well, I'll let Colleen go. She's in charge of this slide. I'll be quiet.
So
Just get to the right tab, Colleen, for you. Hold on.
our behavior matrix draft, that is our working document, is 88 pages.
Scroll down.
It's broken down into our K through 2 with about 15 behaviors. Our 3 through 5, sorry.
It's just loading. Sorry. Takes a minute. I will, oh. I'm gonna get to the part you're talking about, Colleen.
It's our third through fifth grade, about 15 identified behaviors. Many of them repeat and they're just a little bit different sounding at different grade levels. 6th through 8th grade across our whole SU, 25 cases that we address. And in 9 through 12, there's 22, but there's probably a lot more detail in some of our high school ones. In each of the,
Sorry, it's just slow.
it's all right. In each of the pieces in the matrix, it lists, just bring it to the top here. Whether it's a minor or what the behavior is, a verbal, credible threat, disruption.
There we go. Sorry.
It will have what is, if it's a minor or major, and then what is the staff response and the behavior team response and pieces like that. So like one example of one that I'll share with you on page 63 is if a student were to be found with a vape, what that process looks like. And
Are you in the middle school?
it's in middle and high school, so I'm just going to look on page 63 right now. Which one?
There's 3rd through 5th. Let me just get there so people can see it.
Use of possession of tobacco, vape, marijuana on school property. It's always considered a major. So it says minor or major, and it identifies to the administrators which one it is and what are some of the responses if it's minor, if it's major. In this one, in possession of vape, marijuana on school property, it's always taken from the student and then they're connected with administration ASAP. If it's a first, all of our vapes, we give anything like that. If we have confiscated anything, that we share that with our SRO. We call all of these people who work with our students. So if it happens to be a student who is on a plan, we would definitely contact our director of special education. If it is an equity issue, we would contact our DEI person. We always contact the parents, the SRO to know what's happening. And some of the responses to the behavior are mandatory bag check for a certain period of time, 4 days of in-school suspension. One of the things we worked on over the last 2 years is having our planning room and having an SAP for substance prevention education. So sometimes the students do not feel comfortable or able to or want to have the education piece. So they have a more traditional of the 4 in-school suspension, but we have 2 days of in-school suspension with sessions with the SAP. Safety plan for reentry. And then in some of the behaviors, there is listed second offense or 3rd offense. And so it usually always goes through the list of what it is, if it's a minor or major, and the staff response. Another piece I want to draw our attention to is that this is, like I already said, the 3rd year that we've been working on this and sharing this. We have an update day to work on this in June. one of the things that is really important, has been really important to the administrative team, was kind of the lead up in the beginning of this document, and that is the responses to behaviors in general, responses to trauma behavior, how we support students, what are some alternatives that we share with all of our teachers when we do training. So if you look on page 12, Christine, responding to behaviors, we have some of those. This is what our school has done over quite a few years. I think Jennifer was in the first year we started working with our collaborative problem solving and with our team that has helped with our trauma work from Think Kids and from Dave Melnick, and how we're always looking at the challenging behaviors versus stress behaviors. And it was important to us to keep that in mind when we were creating the matrix as an administrative team and staff.
So I think the part that's published, just to add on,
Yeah, go ahead.
we published the beginning part of this document in our handbook this year, in our parent guardian handbook, and plan to work, as Colleen said, in June to update the matrix. We've lived it, and there have been behaviors that have come up that are not in the matrix. So we make a note, like, we have to figure out this for next year, and just working through some of the behaviors that have come up through the matrix. We know we have some tweaks to make, so we plan to do that and then publish it out.
And I appreciate you sharing this. I can see the amount of work that went into it. One question that I have, just for kind of consistency across the large amount of documentation we have on this, and large just verbiage around behavior. Has there been, in the process of doing this, have there been any updates to the procedures as they exist to make sure that they're all harmonized kind of across the board?
I think that was something we have discussed and it's something we've done in our handbook, and I think we've done it in this too. I think Christine has shared at the beginning of the year that sometimes when a new behavior comes up that maybe we didn't have in here, or something that we haven't addressed, we will add it to working documents in a different color that it was
In the handbook,
a
yeah.
new piece.
Mhm.
So I think there might be a few of those in here.
And you-
But that's how we
and
get
you're
ready
talking
to
about
prepare
policy?
for them.
Yeah, but were you asking
More
about policy?
procedure, because I know that's like the
So
level closest to
yeah,
the matrix.
so definitely, there's some information on the HHB policy in here. We have things in our hand because we have to on weapons, what that looks like, those policies, but definitely in making sure that we're cross-checking and making sure all behavior-related policies are can't think of the word I'm looking for, but they are referenced in this document. And
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
So that's on our list.
All right.
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna go.
Can we see this? Can we read it?
The board has a copy of it. Yes,
Okay.
you do. We haven't released it to the community yet. The first section before you get to the matrix is in the handbook for everybody to look at, and it does, talk about our philosophy and some of the ways that we respond to behavior, but not the actual, like, if you do this, this is what you can expect. And we've talked a lot about it as a team, and we've made some notations on the document. This is a guide, and while we want consistency in our responses to behavior, it's not always black and white. It's not, and so I think some of the concerns with the team are, if we release this document and there are behaviors in our schools, will there be questions about, well, it says this, but this was the response. So, we're making notes on there that it is a guide, and it is up to the discretion of the administrator to really make those final decisions about consequences. So, yeah,
So, and
that makes sense.
As far as timelines, I know you mentioned in June you're going to have some time set aside to work on it. Is the idea to have this complete and ready to put out of the world by the beginning of 25, 26?
That's our plan. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have a different, when you have a behavior matrix, do you have like you probably have a list of additional considerations when you're making a decision about how to address a behavior. Does that list change for every different behavior?
The consequences or the responses?
No, the one
Additional
was doing it a different way.
considerations.
I think I might be on the wrong page here, but I think in like the last column we have like if a student is on 92 call, here, if a student is on a 504 call here for input. Is that what you're
Sort of. I mean, I would think that additional considerations for vaping might be totally different from additional considerations from
Disruption.
well, I was going to say wielding a weapon.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Not that obviously the behavior is different, but do you have things to take into consideration when at different levels of severity?
Yes, and different. So I don't know why we keep using vaping. I guess it's
Yeah, yeah.
right. So a vaping consequence for the first time looks very different than the vaping consequence for the second time.
And something like a weapon has like very cut and dry pieces because they have to include the police department and pieces that we have to look at.
But if a student comes to school and forgets that they have a jackknife in their pocket because they went hunting this weekend, I mean, there's some common sense that goes along with it as well. And they come to you and they're like, oh my God, I forgot I had this in my pocket. We're not going to suspend the child for bringing a weapon to school in those instances, right? I think that's kind of what you're getting at, or maybe not.
Sort of. I just mean that the things that you would have to consider in the background of a child, in the child's whole life,
Yes.
when you're considering
Yes.
how to mete out punishment, would be totally different for this student versus this student. And I wonder whether you have suggestions in the matrix about other additional things to consider when you have a
I don't think
student
they're
who's
in the
being
major.
violent.
No. We do have those conversations. So for example,
They're in our
if you
approach.
have a student who has a disability like Tourette's, you're not going to be flagging them the same way for using language as you would somebody else, right? There's also, if you had a kid who just got kicked out of their house and doesn't have a home, you're going to treat that differently, right? But we don't actually have like a list of here are the things that we come across that cause us to think a little differently about how to help support the kid in that time. Does that make sense? You don't have that anywhere.
And
That's what
I
I was
think
wondering
that's,
is if like,
yeah.
because the behaviors, some behaviors don't have causes, they're just like peer pressure. But
Yes.
some behaviors do have causes, and I just wondered whether in the matrix, you have or plan to have things that,
Well, there's a range of consequences, and I think we've all been trained in trauma responses, and typically it's meets the definition of a traditional behavior, consequent, peer pressure, whatever, bad decision in the moment, or it's a trauma response. And if it's a trauma response, we look at it in a very different way. It doesn't mean there's no consequences, but we do look at it in a different way and respond differently.
Bill, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, behavior is an immensely complicated thing. And for some of us who have studied it and actually studied under some of the best behavioral interventionists there is in the business, it's important to understand that all behavior has reasons behind it. Now, some of those reasons are within the child's scope of control, and some aren't within the child's scope of control, or even less in the child's scope of control. And so I think the legal profession has really come up with terms that fit behavioral intervention, and one of them is a reasonable person within actions that you take for consequences. would a reasonable person understand that this child is under a different set of rules because of socioeconomic or trauma-based factors and things like that? And so it's really difficult to come up with a very cut and dry, if X happens, then Y happens. Mostly because, nothing is equal. Also, a lot of behavior um, uh, um, uh, things that you can do are scripted in statute. Things that you can do and things you can't do. And so a lot of the policy covers what statute allows us to do. And then it's when then the procedure to try to see how that is applied. And so I think the document that the administrators are coming up with is really a fantastic first step in creating consistency, not only within schools, but across the district. So
Mhm.
thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Bill. And just to kind of carry on that point, I mean, I think, I acknowledged before, it's clearly, you've been working on what, 2 or 3 years. It's an immense amount of work that's been done. And I think that as much of a guide to what it will landing in the zone of what it would probably look like to respond to an entire, encyclopedia of different behaviors you might see with students, this will be very helpful. I think the question that I have right now, because again, this is the double-edged sword of there being a ton of information and a ton of verbiage about it, is that it's a ton of information, there's a ton of verbiage. So I'm interested to hear at this moment, what the plan is to, once this is out, to communicate it with the school community. All right.
You ready? All right, we've got a little bit more and then we'll get to that.
Okay.
I'm gonna walk you through basically what happens when a behavior happens in the school. So you'll see on the first one, that's okay, on the
I'll see if I can make it bigger.
left-hand side it's a minor behavior, it falls under minor categories, and our behavior matrix, one of the columns, one of the rows is minor, right, and then followed by a major. The middle is if it falls under hazing, harassment, and bullying potential. And then on the far side is the major behavior. So if it's minor behavior, this is basically expected to take place in the classroom by the classroom teachers. This is basic classroom management stuff. So we use responsive classroom at the elementary level. And essentially there's 3 major things, which is if you break it, you fix it, you get a timeout, or you have a loss of privilege, and they should be relevant to the situation at hand. So for example, if I'm not using my paintbrush in an appropriate way, I may lose the privilege of using that paintbrush until the teacher has time to go back and reteach, and you should model that you can use it appropriately. So these are minor behaviors, and we don't log those yet.
We do.
Consistently.
We log them.
It's not consistent. I mean, so teachers in class, they're not logging every time they're redirecting a kid to go take a timeout, right? So what happens is, and then logical consequences imposed, and they fill out the behavior log if it meets a certain level. If the child keeps doing it, then we're thinking something more is going on, and they just needed the reminder and the reteaching. So we look at it moving into a major category, at which point we communicate with the parents, and we bring them up to what we call kid talk, which is part of our MTSS process, where they go and communicate with the team to figure out what might be some ideas. And this might be a point where collaborative problem solving comes in, and you have the repeated behaviors, even though you've used consequences and it's not working. If it's a minor stress behavior, basically we do a lot of the same stuff, only we start with making sure your kid's regulated. So you, as Dave Milnick would say, connect before you correct. So you make sure the kid's regulated, and then you can work through better understanding it, and often that is a part of regulating through problem-solving conversation. Then we impose the consequence. After that, we fill out the log. If we need assistance from our social emotional team or the administrative team, they get called, and then you work through that adding on to kind of a different layer that's really looking at the trauma or skills-based lens for behaviors. If it is already a major behavior, teacher would call the office for immediate assistance or the support team, depending on if it's a stress behavior or just a regular behavior. I shouldn't say regular behavior. And then they fill out the form, then the administrator imposes the consequences. And again, we use that log sheet about, like, we look it up, right? I'm telling her, hey, Christine, here's the behavior. And we're like, where's it in matrix? And we talk through that. After that, we call home, we work with a social emotional team to determine what our triggers might be, lagging skills might be, have a collaborative problem solving conversation with the student, and then follow up with staff. Couple of major key ideas behind consequences that are in our matrix. So I mentioned the 3: loss of privilege, timeout, or time away from class. Restorative practices is an option for some situations, or repairs, restitution. Sometimes you create individualized instruction around that. You might need some direct instruction around something. You may do an accountability project or a fix-it plan. Collaborative problem-solving conversations, redirection. Sometimes there's detentions and suspensions and content, especially if it's major or repeated minors.
I'll just add one thing that comes up a lot. That's in policy. We give lunch restrictions as a consequence, and we cannot take away recess because that's in our wellness policy. And nor do we want to take away an entire recess, but sometimes I'll reframe this. If the infraction happens at recess, you can take some time away from a student at recess. But if something happens during the day, administrators are not allowed to take time from recess. And sometimes 5 minutes from recess has a much larger impact than a lunch restriction. So just something to consider. I think under our last policy, before it was updated, administrators had the leeway to be able to take a few minutes from a student. I think that's not in the new policy.
It's the law.
And it's
in statute.
It's
You
in
can't take
statute?
away recess, actually.
Is it any part of recess? So we used to be able to take 5 minutes or, to have talk it through. This is what happened. This is what happens when this is the consequence for your action. And I know we haven't been able to do that and since the new policy was adopted. But if it's in statute, we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, I know it's in statute. I cannot cite the statute.
Okay.
off the top of my head, but,
Okay.
And that's unless it's
Safety.
in offense germane to
Recess.
Or happens right before recess and you don't feel like them going to recess. It's a
It's
safe
safe.
option.
Sure,
Right.
but it's not kind of like something. Yeah, got it.
Okay, so that middle one
Okay.
is about the hazing,
Yeah.
harassment, and bullying, which we'll take on the next page. Essentially, when we get something at the administrative level that we need to consider, we take a look at it. Staff fill out a form, give it to us, then we have to consider whether or not it might be a violation of the policy. And if it might be a violation of the policy, and you're already on that page.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. So if that's the case, then we contact parents and we have to assign a designated investigator for that. And supportive measures get put in place at that time. Once we open an HHB investigation, we cannot impose consequences immediately because that violates due process. So anytime you open an HHB case, you have to wait until it's finished before you can impose any consequences. So what you do to one, you must do to all. So if you say, for example, this event happened between two kids, and you can't say you have to stay over here and you can do whatever you want. You have to tell both of them the same thing. So you both have to stay X amount of distance apart for X amount of time until we complete this, and then we can impose consequences. And then we have 5 days to complete the interviews. We have 1 day, sorry, I should have said that. We have 1 day to determine whether or not it might be a violation, then we have 5 days to complete the interviews, and then we have 5 days from that to present a report. Once the case is substantiated or not, we then communicate that out to the families, and we put consequences and a safety call.
So, to whom does the report go?
So any staff who hears about it, we have a template from the
Student
Visbit.
conduct form gets
So
filled
it's a
out.
student conduct form. On one side it says, you fill this out, you give the information. On the flip side, it says you have to turn it into the administrator. So the administrator then gets that report and has to then decide within that day, like with the school day.
Mhm.
Or school day, whether or not it might violate the policy, at which point then from there, they assign the investigator.
But the investigator is not the person who decides whether it violates. the
So it, at the end of the investigation, there is a recommendation. Like one of the last steps is the recommendation. So this investigator believes that this does or does not because of these reasons.
Yeah, but her question is, does the administrator investigate?
It depends.
Yeah.
So it depends on a kid's comfort level, who they're comfortable with, what kind of working relationships or outside conflicts. We try to make the best decision to get the information that we need to move forward. So I thought that you'd ask her question, who gets the report? I know when Jen was talking about like at the end, like,
Yep.
so that, the 5 days to do this, the 5 days to do that. So there's the gathering information, then you decide to open, and then there could be, at that point, then you could say, I have these interviews, right? And then you keep notes on interviews, who's in the room, who's there, we can do them. And I might say to Christy, can we tag team this one? And can you be the determiner at the end? So she would get all that information. And she would make a determination, and we would follow up with whatever the consequences or the restorative piece would be. But when it goes to a parent, the people that were involved, the families that were involved, they get all that information that says, this is what we sold, this is what we found out. To me, the HHB part, like the ones that rise to the level of an HHB, they're usually a little bit clearer. Because this is a timeline that then doesn't feel good. If you're talking 5 days to do this, 5 days to do that, you can have a student absent, you could have a school break, you can do it. So you can have an event happen in September and it doesn't get wrapped up until October, November, just on like the timeline and things that step in. I don't know. I got back and forth with Christine about asking the board for an executive, especially on my experience, as a parent, as an HHB, and the timeline. And then Christina said, they're working, however that is working, they know that this process is.
There's a committee
is
meeting. There's a committee meeting. They've met once, I think, so far. And what I've heard, Elizabeth might know more based on the look on her face, the policy needs to be rewritten. The policy needs to be rewritten. Is that what you're hearing?
There's a committee, and the way that it's currently laid out is that the committee is run, the agenda for the committee is instigated by the Secretary of Education, who, for the purpose of this year, has called for only 4 meetings, 1 hour each quarter, to discuss Title IX. That is it.
Title IX, not HHB.
Well, it's the HHB task force or committee or whatever.
Yeah.
Advisory.
Yes.
Advisory committee. We are trying desperately to get through a bill that changes the makeup of the advisory committee and also who sets the agenda for it and the number of meetings that call for it, all that stuff. And to retool the actual HHP
The policy.
policy.
Yeah.
But it's, at the moment, it's a real, truly mess.
Yeah, it's not moving very quickly from what I've heard at all. But
Really, because they have this huge transformational
Yeah.
bill that they've had to get through, so they did take testimony on their companion bills in the House and Senate, and they have taken testimony in the House on the, it's H-130 is the number of the bill. Any pressure that you feel like putting on either of those committees to take it up would be
okay.
always appreciated. But they've taken testimony on it. And they took testimony on it after crossover, but they'll probably won't get addressed this session, but with public pressure, they could take it up next session and
Okay.
fix it.
Okay.
So
Okay. Let me, this is still you, Jennifer, right?
Yep. So this just shows an example of, we were asked maybe to think about how we wanted to share out data. So this is an example of what we think we might be sharing out. So this would be April of last year to April of this year's.
what's MBA?
That is the Power School system.
It's a plugin. That's where staff log behaviors. So they will go in and they will, the student name, time of day, where it happened, what the incident was. They will log what their response was to the infraction. And then they can put in that they want administrative support, and the administrator can respond in the system with with the follow-up. So it's hard to see. You might want to talk about it a little
It's
bit,
hard to see,
Jennifer.
but I wonder whether there's something, a way to just take super simple, like put a super simple button on Power School to just log incidents. So this is a thing that I'm trying to work here at high school, right? Because we have a lot going on.
Yeah.
And we have equity tickets, which I've publicly said before, I was going, it was nervous. Like, how are we going to address it on this behavior? How are we going to this is the best thing that ever happened to us because we're getting so much information so quickly because the process of logger Power School is removed, right? And it's open to the public. Children can do it, parents can do it. It gives us a lot of information and data to make changes. So when someone makes an equity ticket, that's not necessarily going into this year.
Not every time. Sometimes.
Sometimes, but not every time.
Yep.
So now we already have two things working. And then in the high school side, we have some like minor high school things, right, that are a little bit more difficult. Cell phones being one. And students coming late to class or cutting class or leaving class. So those, just so we can get that information, are currently logged to make it easier for the teachers because they can't do it. Are just currently logged on a spreadsheet. Dennis is here. That Dennis and I have access to. That we worked out a system for how the cell phones are addressed, and now we're working on a system on how the time out of class, the latest, those things are going to be addressed. So right now, I have 4 documents going that are getting me information, and I've been actively talking to Tracy about like we have to come up with by the end of the day. And I said to Tracy, I don't know, I have to get all those into Power School, right? And I'm not going to put that on my staff. I don't trust the one that would fall into them, but I have it on my calendar that I have to get all those in there, and I will. But I would love your idea of like this magic button on Power School, but I've tried every which way to find it because
It doesn't
of how I have
exist.
created this year, and it's not there.
But this system that we've implemented, this is I think our 3rd year using MBA, and staff are using it. I mean, Jennifer shared earlier, we have some work to do on consistency, but it is a data collection system that's working for us. It does take time, but we can pull reports. This is just an example of last year in April to this year in April. And if you could see it, which you can, but I'll share this out. Every category, so defiance is the first graph. We had last April 32 incidences of defiance. This April we've had 17.
Just interject something before you
Yeah,
go. Just,
sure.
it's really hard to see on this, but the top line on 24 is 50 and the top line on 25 is 30. So that they look
Yeah.
like they're comparable
Yeah.
graphs, but it's actually much lower in the second year.
Yes, every one of the incidents is much lower, I
Yeah.
think, except maybe one, I can't remember which one. So, and we were just in a webinar with Power School, I don't know, yesterday, I can't remember. Looking at how to run, there are more reports that we can run that we didn't know we could run, so we're learning about that as well. So it is a valuable system for showing our progress. It is, yeah, it does take time. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that, but.
So can you just read what
Sure.
the categories are?
Yep. So the first column there is defiance, and that's decreased.
And this is for what grades?
This is the whole, this is Mount Ascutney School District. I
Okay.
did the whole
Okay.
district just to get a snapshot. Disrespect is the second category. The third category is disruption. The next one is physical contact. The next one is property misuse or damage. And cell phone violation. On the bottom one, we've got a tech violation that we didn't have on the top row. Tardy, out of bounds, so if you leave school. The M in front of it is major, so this is major defiance, major disrespect, major disruption, major physical aggression, major sexual misconduct, major verbal threat. So all those majors involve our administration, the minors, teachers handle until they become a major. If they're repeated over time, become a major, then administration or our behavior response team. And it looks different in all our schools, the resources that we have. So, you know, the goal is we have social emotional interventionists that will help respond. But when we're short staffed, those SEIs get assigned to students as one-on-one support staff. So it's yeah, or yeah, they get pulled. So it's a work in progress, for sure.
So a couple of things like, you just said something interesting about the buttons, the said the magic button. We're having some things in this document. So we're asking when we have this tutorial to like some things that make it easier and requiring some things to like absolutely happen. So you just said like when it's a 3 and then on the fourth one it will turn into a major, like something like that's not automatic. So that would be a nice automatic button so that if a teacher put in 3 minors, that the next time they go or any teacher goes, it automatically changes to a major. So things like automated are much nicer. Like Christine said, making sure that teacher has their space to put in a required action of what they did so that it's documented. Like some of those required buttons that you'd have in a Google form are not all here yet. So there's definitely conversations we're having with MBA to make that easier. But to Kate's point, like having 4 separate documents is hard, but there's also different like feedback you get from each one and a comfort level of certain people who are like, I really feel comfortable with this document. I feel like it's clear. I feel like I'm getting the point across. So when I think of staff using products and things we do, you're also doing the same thing we do for students. We're trying to meet them where they're at and what works best for them.
Yeah.
So
it's hard. And I talk about this from a high school perspective, and I mean, I don't want to talk about this all night long, but I could. Right?
Oh yeah.
I go on and on about this. So there's lots of things that's why, like the reason we switched to the spreadsheets is because cell phones are a real problem, right? When I went to your principal, I didn't know I was going to do with cell phones and social media. So they're a real problem that we're trying to just get data so we can figure out a solution. On the flip side of class time in class and students coming late or cutting class, we've taken away as we move to proficiencies, right? Grades are not tied towards seat time, right? So that's no longer, it's urgent for me to be there. I can still class that class without showing up. So now we're attacking that data, just trying to get it, right? And the easiest way to get it is to make less barriers for the teachers to get that information to me. So once we have this on the spreadsheet this year, we're going to have to make an adjustment of how that goes into the MBA, how we report it moving forward and what specific consequences we can address. But to Colleen's point, when something goes in there 3 times and it's a And then it flips to a major on elementary side. We're dealing with one teacher, right? Who's consistent in what their
Keeping the behaviors for their one
what their
classroom.
expectations are in the classroom. And in the high school, you might see 7 teachers a day who don't necessarily have the time to connect. We try and make that time on Tuesdays, but just being able to me, like a huge first step has been the equity tickets. It's been the spreadsheets. Now we can bring this data to the staff and start these conversations for what we can bring forward next year in terms of expectations, updating our code of conduct. I'm an elementary teacher, right? That is where I started, and there's lots of good things that happened on the elementary side that get thrown out the window in high school that I want to bring back in terms of like these are our classroom norms, these are our expectations. It's not all about content, and we have a phenomenal staff that is willing, able, and wants to do this with us. So. I don't know.
And just to reinforce, you mentioned this a while ago, but it sounds like even though there are all of these different entry points for data, it's all being collated into the same spot, right? In MBA,
It will be.
It will be.
Okay. It's Kate's giving her staff a shortcut and we'll enter it.
got a comment over here?
Check.
Sure.
I'm a bad boy, so don't the biggest thing I've been planning on attending high school, and the biggest thing I heard from students is that it's not consistent. And I'm going to say some things that I'm probably not going to say to some of you. I was dealing with behavior for 30+ years, and really, I disagree with Christine that it is basically black and white. There are extenuating circumstances in every case. But the result is the choice was made. And so the choice was made, and so it has to be the rightest choice for this. This is what's going to happen. All right? When you bring the extenuating circumstances into it, that's when you start to lose a consistency. Like in the matrix, and this has been bothering me for 3 years, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to everyone matrix, but there are there's one phrase, and sometimes I think President Matrix is ambiguous. There's one phrase in there, and it chews me up, because it says, these are all consequences assigned. That's going to be different for everybody, based on their value system, based on their relationship with the student, based on their understanding with the student. I hear you right. Consequence based on the judge the situation. And I may judge the situation totally differently. And so those consequences are not going to be consistent as a result of that. There has to be something that makes sense, and it depends also. I get a gazillion trainings, so it depends also really what your philosophy you want to follow. The God for me, theoretically, the God for me is William Glasser, who does reality therapy and control theory. And basically, the channel is yes, you may affect trauma at age 2. And that's a sad thing. And that's where our counselor can be open. You are choosing at this moment in time to do this behavior. Regardless of what happened when you were 2 years old. And so that philosophy, it kind of eliminates the extenuating circumstances. I can tell you, in 30+ years, everybody has been through that. We still practice as all of them. It's just like different things 35 years ago. And somebody in California would have bought $50. But somebody more understandable, the student, the teacher, and you have a lot less problem with the parents because of that consistency. And I we have made a lot of progress with the cell phone thing. A lot of progress. And it's you know, it really has to be consistent across the board. Not give any possible response better than response.
Wow.
That's all I have to say.
No, I appreciate the input. Sure thing.
Just to follow up on that one. So my name is Matt Frederick out of West Wisconsin. I couldn't agree with that more strongly. That really is the crux of my participation in last meeting at this meeting. In that I understand that there are extenuating circumstances. There always are, right? But when it comes to discipline, it really is black and white. The students have to know, if I do this, this is going to happen. And mostly that relates to in the classroom because extenuating circumstances can be tackled outside of it. When it comes to the classroom, there are expectations that have to be followed because all of the other students are trying to learn, right? They're trying to be safe. So that has to be first and foremost. The offending student can be addressed outside the classroom by trained professionals, SEI, whoever else has to deal with it. But it has to be black and white in the classroom because that discipline is what allows the teachers to teach and not have to be parents in the classroom because they don't have time for that. Like there isn't enough. So I hope that that was captured well enough on Zoom or on Google Meets because I feel like that really is the crux of where all of this falls apart.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yep, it's real quick.
I think you have to decide as a group, are we doing behavior modification or are we doing behavior management? Those are two totally different things. You know, behavior modification is more of an educational thing. Behavior decide for certain. You know, towards the end of the year, that's what you're going to say. Because we planned already.
Mhm.
So now we're becoming more and more serious. Just to come by and
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay, next, you good?
Yeah.
All right, Tracy's gonna take over.
This one.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna show you a lot of words, and then I promise you we're gonna show you what it looks like in time, right? So when we left the last meeting, and I do want to say, like, there's some things we've added to this after the conversations, but a lot of the foundation has been here, and we're just trying to share it out with you now. So we're looking for an increase in communication from families and to the board so that you're aware. We talked about sharing the behavior matrix. We have the idea of a caregiver informational night where they come in and we kind of go through this with them. What will that attendance look like? I don't know. We'll probably have to make it a community dinner or something to draw people in so that they understand this information as well. We talked about adding like a school climate as part of newsletters so that information is regularly going out to families on what we're focusing on. Sharing the reports with staff in newsletters and with the board on a regular basis. Talking with the teachers about guidelines for communication, making sure that those minor behaviors are communicated to the families from the teachers. So increasing that. And then administrators communicating all the major behaviors, which we do now, but I think communicating the minors will help as well. We also have ongoing work to do with staff, students. The staff will present the behavior matrix to all staff during in-service days, and I'll show you this in the timeline. regular review of behavior expectations with the staff. And those are things that we go over regularly when something's kind of bubbling in one of the schools. We address that as, this is really kind of a hot topic right now. Also, the MBA system or the Power School system, just this last Thursday, we go over how to consistently report, at the elementary school, that is the teachers that are putting it in. We noticed in the MBA system that there were things that when it got reported, it didn't show to the teachers. So we've been working with them about how to make sure it's all communicated clearly, and then how to make sure staff are doing it in a way, entering it in a way that it gives us the information we need and the right people know the actions that they have to take. Reviewing data with staff, right? Not just with sharing it with you, but making sure that the staff see the monthly behavior data so we can target problem areas, making sure our support staff are well trained in some de-escalation, and then working on the restorative practices work at the high school. I think we have some new positions going in. Having all staff trained in HHB, dedicating time at staff meeting, and then administrators developing a school culture survey to all staff fall, winter, and spring. And then measure the MRA, which we already administer. We're in the process of administering right now, but reporting those results out as well. So some new students, we already do September and January assemblies, like reminding them of behavior expectations. I think that's more common probably on an elementary side. We have those regular morning meetings and access to them, but we'll do that across the school, making sure that there's assemblies that focus on hazing, harassment, and bullying. We have a student-led initiative and some trainers where 2 students in our school are going to be trained, and then they're going to come back and present to all of you.
Came.
They already did.
They did it last
month.
Yeah, they
Look
came
at us.
last
We're ahead of the
week.
game.
Yeah.
And then the school culture surveys that go out and reporting that back. How does the family and the staff feel about, students feel about the culture and the climate of the schools?
I'm going back a slide.
Sure.
Oh, no.
I'm more.
Yeah. Oh, training facilitated by Tracy Price.
That's already
That's
scheduled.
current.
Yeah, that's already scheduled.
That's scheduled.
For
She-
in service.
She's trying to bring in Big, I think,
Okay.
to do that training. Yeah, with the staff, the full
Oh.
staff.
And can you go back one more?
Yep.
No, one more.
One more.
I still think that, I've said this before, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I still think that we should just have a community conversation about it. Where there's no panel, there's no necessarily agenda, but we adults can actually just talk about the bullying and the impact of bullying and the like talk to each other as parents. I know that we've tried before having middle
Yeah,
school
we
parents.
have.
Nobody came.
Nobody came.
But I do think that if we presented it to the public the right way, that we could get parents interested. And
Can I say something?
Yeah.
I would like to present it like, how can I help? How can I do my part, right? Because there's a lot of things that fall on the school on a Monday morning that, in my world, I don't know, like probably in elementary and middle school, that happened over a weekend of what someone liked or what someone clicked or what someone shared, right? And even so, like how can we help be supportive to all of us? And social media is a problem. It is a huge problem, and most of the things that we have come through the high school in terms of bullying have a social media aspect, right? And now there's just a couple things that I think that we should have conversations about, like how can we all help these kids? Because I think that they're gonna look back one day and know, like we know now, like how could my parents have not known that smoking was bad for them, right? How could they have not known that? Like how could they have smoked their house? Those things. Sorry, Mom.
And I think these kids are gonna look back and say, how could these adults have not known that these cell phones and this social media was bad for us, right? How could they have not taken a stand for it? And the other thing that, that I would like to talk about as a community and get support on is vaping such an easy one for me to use is culpability, right? You're in the bathroom, you're sitting in a circle, one person that thing has a vape. So much time is spent figuring out who had the vape, who actually touched it, how it got passed around. And that's why I want to bring, talk about that code of conduct and talk about, and I love to have parents here saying, that feel supportive. And we do have that. We just need it with communication because there are a lot of people, this is your child, right? So when you're afraid for your child, your first response is also, well, did they have the vape in their hand? I don't know. I'm not in the bathroom. I'm not going to be able to, I'm not going to be able to prove it, but they were there. I want to worry less about getting people in trouble, right? Because that's what everyone's afraid of. And I want to worry more about how we can work together to address the things that are harming our children, including cell phones, social media, vaping.
I think these are both good thoughts that are totally germane to what we're talking about now. The next agenda item is communication, and that's totally part of what I wanted to touch on, probably briefly because it's gone on for a while, but I appreciate you both bringing that up.
Okay. We'll get to, where were you, Trace?
Sorry.
That's okay. No, it's great questions. And
I think it was work with students, right? So assemblies to focus on these behaviors, the bystander training that took place, students and teachers creating mission statements in the classrooms and their norms, which, extending that to the high school as well. And then the culture surveys. Okay. And then for us, as administrators, it's being really up to date with the HHB training. And, I feel really lucky to have partners in the school where we can help each other know better and feel more confident. But we need to do that together, that work all together. Shifting some of the oversight to Tracy Price to help be that first filter for us. Creating a system for sharing data, these surveys we talked about, presentations for students and staff about behavior expectations and consequences. Holding staff accountable for communicating with families. I think, at the elementary side, distinguishing between major and minor is really different for us. And I think there are things I'm asked to do that really are minor classroom practices that I need teachers to take on. And then I do think there are major things sometimes that they take on that they need to shift to me. So sorting those out and getting in sync with each other about how to do that. And then just creating a plan to support the teaching staff. And those are a lot of words, but what I really want to show you is how we're going to do it and when we're going to do it. Because I think it's easy to say we're going to do this, but we spent some time thinking about when and how. So when we say to you, we're going to report things 3 times a year, and did they get this digitally? Do they have all this information? Because that's so tiny, I can't read a thing up there. But that showing you when we're going to do it, right? And mapping it out so that we can all help hold each other accountable. And you can see, like, it starts in August. We're already thinking about that training. We've already reached out to find out when the HHB training is happening next year and how can we get on, get people signed up. Can you make it this year? Quite honestly, it took place on the first day of school. You can imagine how convenient that is for any of us to attend that kind of a training. So we can share the timeline with you, but just to show you kind of what we've already done and thought about. Some of these are things we already do, but just kind of mapping out the commitment we have to doing it in a way that shows you that, not just tell you that we're going to do it. So.
And this whole presentation will go in the packet too for the CSO folks.
Yep. Okay, let me stop sharing. Okay, back to you, Davis.
Yep. Well, I appreciate all of the time and effort that you all spent putting that together, and beginning the process of clarifying, communicating some of these things. I will also go and take a look at the timeline when it's easier to read. Yeah, but Yeah, unless there are any other comments from board members or community, we'll move on. So, Liz?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what I'm gonna say, but I do have this behavior response overview printed out. And I just have a lot of issues with it. And I just, just looking at it, I can see a lot of problems, and I can see how this philosophy contributed to the issues my daughter had, where it escalated to HHB, where then HHB escalated to her leaving. Like one of the things that really strikes me on here, I'm trying to find it, where it basically says we're moving away from the zero tolerance philosophy. And I think that that is a huge mistake especially when you're talking about bullying, when you're talking about racism, when you're talking about, anything that falls under HHB. That's really concerning to me as a parent. The other thing, I'm just trying to be fast, that's why it feels forceful. The other thing that is a little frustrating to me to see is, and I'm hearing you all talk about it, and it's something I think I'm going to disagree with Elizabeth on too, is that you're talking about tailoring the response to each student based on like their trauma history, their socioeconomic status, things like that. And number one, that's really, really confusing to other students. It's especially been confusing to students like my daughter who's autistic, who is like, I need to know the rules and I need to know the consequences, right? And to be in a classroom and see like, this person does this and they get in trouble, this person does it and they don't get in trouble, and like, it's just all really confusing and it causes chaos. And I do feel like that in our HHB situation, that also got applied in a way. I mean, the student that was bullying my daughter also had things going on at home. And I feel like that contributed to the response or the lack of response, to the unwillingness to expel the student. So I just think that, like, I would just ask the board to just revisit the philosophy behind this. I think it's really flawed. I think it's causing a lot of problems. I also am looking at, for determining the consequences based on the student's age, identity, culture, traumas, etc. And that just feels like we're holding kids to different standards. And it feels like that's doing a disservice to the child who is being held to a lesser standard. Like, as if saying, oh, they've experienced trauma, so they're not capable of reaching the same level of, behavior as the other kids in the class. I've been doing a lot of reading about this and, watching videos by principals and things like that who have talked about how you really get the behavior that you demand in school. And if your behavior, you have inconsistent behavioral expectations based on where the kid is coming from, those kids don't have a chance to reach that level. And you're not getting the best out of all of your students. So it's just kind of concerning to me, and I just feel like there's a lot that teachers are asked to do and deal with in the classroom that, like the focus of all these behavior policies are on the behavior student. Like, how do we help the behavior student, reach this, be able to behave, right? What are all the supports we can give them? And I think that's awesome. And I think it should happen outside of the classroom, because all these other students that are there to learn are missing out on class time, and they're, being traumatized in some cases by these other students' behavioral issues. So, I just wish there was more focus on consistency and on the kids that are going to school and behaving and following the rules and needing the rules, like needing the structure. And that includes trauma students. I have more to say, but I don't want to take time. But There's also a lot in the student conduct and discipline policy that isn't being followed. And the other thing real quick that I noticed was that, you know, in our policy, it says we can expel students. And last meeting, the PowerPoint didn't include expulsion as an option. I had teachers at Albert Bridge tell me that they're not allowed to expel a student. I had a teacher from Windsor tell me that the training has been inconsistent for HHB, and that they learned more going to the state conference than they did 4 years in the school. I've been hearing a lot of things from people, so it feels like the adults in the school don't even really know like what is going on, and the kids don't know what's going on. So, just some thoughts.
No, I appreciate the input on that, and I think those are all things that we can, consider as we continue to work on this plan and improve the matrix and communicate this to folks in the coming year.
Also, it's not legal. I mean, I don't know whether this is what you were talking about or not, but it's not legal to expel a student 8 years.
That's not. I'm referring to a sixth grader.
All right. Any other board thoughts, comments for you on? Bill?
No, I'm just trying to piece things together here. I'm only getting about half of what people are saying. So
Yeah, and I do apologize to the folks online. I know that our technical limitations tonight are making it hard to hear public comment and probably some of the further off board comment, but I'm trying to script notes so we can capture stuff in the minutes.
Yeah.
well, if people can turn their cameras on when they're talking, at least some of us could lip read.
Okay.
All right, noted, Bill. All right, if there's no further comment on that, and I appreciate us taking the time that we needed on that. And like I said, that's all going to be out in our packet, so we can review that. And I look forward to seeing that timeline be implemented and seeing this lands, and hopefully be able to attend one of the sessions and just see how this is communicated. But thanks for your commentary and thanks for all the work that folks have done on this. Moving on to item C, which, like I said, we touched on a little bit earlier, that's communication. I think given the time that we have been here, I'm not going to spend too much time on that, but I did want to bring it up because it's something that kind of comes up in tandem with, with the sort of discipline and behavior issue, but it also, it touches on everything that we do. I don't think that there's been a year where I have not kind of been the squeaky wheel about saying like, hey, how are we communicating? Are we using all the channels that we have as well as we can be? Are people, regardless of what we feel like we're doing, are people actually getting informed, knowing what's going on in a reasonable, timely fashion? And what else can we do? We need to think outside the box and this stuff because it's a constantly changing information environment. And I know that people get, I can speak from my own experience. I get so many newsletters and just like giant info blasts with pages and pages and pages of text. Like it kind of becomes white noise. So one thing I just want us to be thinking about, I think especially going into our retreat this summer, I'd like to spend some more substantial time on that. Just like brainstorm a little bit, like what can we do that we're not already doing? And how can we improve our current communication practices? One thing that I'll throw out there, and this came from our last meeting and getting some more folks involved, but I think the more formal and kind of planned communication that we can have with our PTO and SCIP groups is really good. Making sure that we're really utilizing those, parent and community groups that are talking about a lot of the same things, that have a lot of the concerns that we have, and make sure that there's like two-way communication happening between administrators and school board and teachers and what have you, and those groups. I think when I joined the board during COVID, it felt like there wasn't a ton of activity there, and there were a lot of sort of other considerations going on. But now that we're in this state where these groups are getting together and are more active, and I'm sort of starting to like make connections and talking to people, I want to make sure that we're formalizing some of that. That's just one idea. I think there's going to be a lot of other ideas, but I wanted to kind of just put that seed in all your minds to think about. I think that we can do some more, and as far as getting ourselves out there too. So Liz?
Just a suggestion, so I'm on Skip, and one of the things we talked about for communication was trying to connect Skip to the Windsor PTO groups. None of us have connection there, none of us know who's there. And I think part of the reason you guys have heard a lot from ground school parents, in recent weeks is because, Davis, you reached out to Skip, and Skip has been talking about all this. I think every member of Skip watched the last board meeting.
Sure.
But we don't know if that's happening in the Windsor side. And I think, you know, everyone feels like it would be really beneficial, especially with our kids moving over, to get to know parents in the Windsor PTO. So I think it would be really nice to have a way to connect the two, whether it's an event, whether it's just an email communication that includes everyone.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that comment, Liz. And I will say the information that went out to Skip also went out to Windsor PTO. Skip was more responsive to it. I know that Windsor PTO is active in doing, you know, I see evidence of that when I come into these buildings, but I think that would be a great connection to make. I think connecting those two groups a little bit out of our scope, but I would love to see it happen. And insofar as we can inform everyone, that'd be great.
I'm always happy to help make connections. I have a strong relationship with Amanda, who reaches out when they need something. In terms of getting information out to parents here are looking for, I get communication a lot, they need teenagers to help.
Yeah.
So I'll be happy to make any connection.
Awesome. No, I appreciate that. Great. Well, yeah, like I said, we're not gonna spend a ton of time on that. There's not any action. I just want to kind of start our gears turning on that, because I think really every year going into our retreat, we should be thinking about just looking at our current state of communication and thinking of ways that we can improve it. Because again, it's a moving target, and we need to stay on top of it. All right. Any last comments, thoughts from folks? Cool. All right. Last but not least, we have summer scheduling.
So I think I emailed you, we had planned on June 9th for the board retreat, but that's the last week of school. So we were thinking of moving it to the following Monday, which would be the 16th of June.
Yeah, did we? I think we made that change.
Did we make the
I
change?
think this was we were gonna.
Is the 16th confirmed?
It's on my calendar.
Confirmed?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, but it's also on my calendar.
It-
So I think it was the July meeting.
You know what? It's okay.
It's not
Double and triple check these things.
No,
Make sure
it's not
everyone knows
changed in
because
the
it is
work.
later
I
in
gotta
the
change in the work plan, so that's where it didn't get changed. I'll do
Okay.
that now. Okay, so it's July. Are we meeting in July or are we not meeting in July?
Oh,
I don't know.
we don't have anything right now in July. I think our next meeting, our
August.
only summer meeting is in August.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I threw this out there in years past. I'm happy to meet in July, with the expectation that, I mean, I don't expect administrators to be there. If the board wants to check them, I know that y'all are having kind of your own time in the summer. And if that's an opportunity for the board to get together and just do a quick check-in, or, you know, I'm okay meeting, but having a little bit less onus on folks to, like, you know, cancel plans and that stuff. So
Why don't we decide that at the retreat,
Sure.
whether we need to do it, because there might be things that we, just as a board with no administrators, want to follow up with it
Sure.
discussion wise.
yeah.
What do you think?
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I think we don't have to decide on that tonight. I think that the retreat would be a good time to decide that. And there's like internal board and admin stuff that we can work on, projects that we can do that, you know, we don't necessarily need the entire extended there to put some time into. So, but yeah, we can definitely address that at the retreat.
Where is our retreat?
It says
ABS.
Okay.
Do you,
It says in person only.
in person only, ABS. Sometimes we do dinner. We have our kitchen staff bring it. Some boards do potluck. If you want, what would you like to do?
I would it would be good if we could just have the kitchen staff do it. I'm only thinking that because we already are signed up for 2 potluck events.
Okay, I just need to communicate, so I can. I
That
will
would
take
be,
care of that.
yeah, that would
Yep.
be really great.
Sure.
I think if we were only doing one of those, I'd be more willing to, but that's
Okay.
2 potlucks on the board within
On the other
a
hand,
few months.
the potluck events that you're talking about are feeding a whole bunch of people.
This is true.
And this is just 6, 8, 10 people.
Let's look at it.
The same.
I'll ask him.
Yeah. I think we're all more bound to be less sharp if you don't want to get something.
That's what, yeah, I think for us, too, yeah.
We could just have cookies.
Yeah, maybe,
I'll do whatever you want.
let's do, how about this?
We
Let's
should bring
do,
bread together and have a meal.
I will reach out to,
awesome.
Got it.
And maybe we
Got
can
it.
do, maybe we
When
do a
is
little like a dessert
June
potluck if
16th?
people want to bring
Oh,
like
June.
cookies or something. I think that's a good way to
June
kind of,
16th.
Yeah.
Okay,
All the differences that people like for desserts too.
yeah. I think that's a good,
so you and I will meet, work on the agenda. Does that sound okay?
yeah, this weekend, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. All right, I think, is that it for summer scheduling?
Yep.
Cool.
Tree planning.
All right. So that will bring us to setting the next agenda. That is going to be that's the retreat. So Christine, you and I will talk
We'll
about our
email, yeah.
retreat plan and get that
Yep.
out to folks.
Yep.
Um,
I'll email you a date when you can meet
excellent.
prior to, is that okay?
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, and the only thing that, I mean, we know we'll be on that is the communication stuff. Yep. It's funny, I say that and I think it's like 2 months away, but it's like, yeah, June was really soon.
It's in a month.
I got to write a graduation speech. You know?
Yeah, you do.
All right. Executive session, no need for executive session?
Nope.
Cool. In that case, I will take in,
Wait, one question.
what's that?
Oh. That's not here. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Never mind.
All right.
Never mind.
All right. Since we don't have executive session, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Someone. Second.
Second. All right. All those in favor, say aye. Opposed?
Aye.
I know what you meant, Bill. All right. So we are adjourning this meeting at 9:09 p.m. And yeah, thanks everyone for all your time.
Stop the recording.